I'm Erica Lukes, host of UFO Classified. For me, life isn't simply black and white. Life is full of many unknowns. It is my goal to travel the world and to work with the world's leading experts in the hopes of making groundbreaking discoveries. Join me on UFO Classified Friday nights at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on KCOR.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Good afternoon, good evening, my friends. I'm Erica Lukes. Always happy to spend my Friday evenings on the radio with my friends in chat, and I want to thank Lib, Karen, Mike, Northern UFOs, all of the people that support Ben, all of the people that get in there and support my show, spread the information, and engage in very good discussions, thoughtful discussions. I really appreciate all of you, and I'm here for you every week. And I believe that we have an obligation to find the truth out, to get good information out to the public, which is very lacking, as I say every week, but that's just my little shtick. So anyway, please spread the word. You can go to ufoclassified.com or ericalukes.com and get more information and view some video interviews that I've done, among other things. As you know, it's never a dull moment for me. I'm always busy studying something and talking to somebody and doing research on this topic, and I love it. I've had a great, productive week, and I've come into contact, thanks to my co-host tonight, Christopher O'Brien, with our guest, who is a lovely woman. I'm so happy that she actually lives in Utah and we get to go hang out. We're going to go hiking. I can't wait. I can't wait to learn from her because she is incredible. She is Chris. And I'm here with Chris O'Brien, who, as we know, is one of the best authors in this topic, has written, lots of different books, Stalking the Tricksters. Chris, first of all, you rock, and I happen to think that you're one of my favorite people in the field because you actually are one of the few people you speak the truth, and you're not afraid to just let it all out.
Well, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. For better or for worse, I've always spoke truth to power, and I've always attempted to be as forthright and error-free as possible in what I say, do, think, feel, and write. And that goes especially in this field where there's so much tacit approval and people just get second, third, fourth, and fifth chances after they've royally screwed up. And it's just not the way I do things. I figure that I have one chance to get it right, and if I don't, shame on me, and shame on all of you if you let me slide. So there's too many people being given free passes and being let slide in this field, right. And I'm not one of them.
Absolutely. That's what I like about you. You're spicy and you're honest and you know a lot. And I really appreciate being friends with you. So if you don't mind, because you introduced me to our beautiful guest this evening, if you would talk about her and introduce her, that would be wonderful.
Well, Eira came into my life very innocently, like several people have, actually. I've met several very good friends over the internet. And I think initially, it was some months ago, almost a year ago, she gave me a friend request. And unlike most people that are out there just trying to pound away and get their numbers stacked, and I actually go and check people out before I just hit the OK button. And I went and checked her out and quickly found, there was something about the information, the way it was presented, some of the photographs, something just kind of made me want to dig a little bit deeper. So I started looking into some of the links that she was providing, and lo and behold, I found a very, very deep, interesting person who is very involved in esoteric learning in areas that I have always been very, very interested in, and have attempted to become a bit proficient and knowledgeable about, which would include things like alchemy and Hermeticism and Gnosticism, the different kinds of shamanic belief systems and shamanic approaches, different kinds of shamanic roles within cultures. And I thought, wow, kindred spirit. How often do you meet somebody like that that's into the same kind of, pretty, I would say a lot of those subjects are a little bit on the arcane and not really well-known subjects to the average people out there in the internet land. People of Walmart probably don't have too many alchemists. But you never know. They could be buying vinegar and some baking soda, and they might not even realize that when they put those two things together, they're going to have quite a little explosion. So, maybe we have some part-time alchemists out there in Walmart, and I'm not sure. But another thing that I noticed is that she was in southern Utah, which has always been one of my favorite places because of the geology and the fossils and the weird sort of other planet type feel that you have out there. And lo and behold, she's right there in the corner of the state. I'm more interested in the center of the state where the really good fossil hunting is, but all these things kind of led together into us kind of slowly over time, over the internet, started getting to know one another. And then I've been just so impressed with her sensitivities, her life experience, some of the wonderful journeys that she's been on, and the kind of wisdom that comes from a solitary experience in wilderness can teach you way more than classrooms of information. So we just kind of just hit it off as friends, and I'm really glad that she took the time to read my books and then find me on social media and say, hey, here I am. I'm a bit of a fan, so it's been great, and I'm looking forward to finally getting a chance to meet her. Like a lot of things online, you feel like you really know somebody, but then you never know until you meet somebody, right? So anyway, I'm sure we're still going to be the best of friends, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The same thing with Erica. I knew Erica for quite some time before we actually met in person, I think. So.
Well, and thank you, Chris, because Eira is wonderful, and it's like she appeared in my life at the right time, and I love that, and I think all of us have a great chemistry, and I can't wait for all of us to hang out and go explore and do some wonderful things. So, Eira, welcome to the show, and I have to say that it is, usually I'm doing a show on UFOs, and so for me though, having had multiple experiences through my lifetime that I couldn't put in a box. I can't say whether it's extraterrestrial. I believe it's a combination of all of these different things. The more I have these experiences, the more I look to people like you to give me information. And so I'm really grateful that you're here tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hey, Chris. Thanks for that introduction. I'm so not worthy. I'm not. So
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
but,
thank you so much. I mean, I really have trouble hearing such nice things, but that's a whole nother story, right? About our own deep contents of our subconscious. But thank you so much for having me. One of my favorite things is to talk about the mysteries. I could talk and talk and talk. I usually get my friends on the phone for 4 to 5 hour conversations, and all we do is talk about the mystery. So it's not even my occupation, it's my vocation. It's the way I live my life. It's the way I think. And it's the way my life unfolds. But I hope we're going to talk about UFOs because it's one of my favorite subjects. I don't usually get out and get the opportunity to talk about that part of the extraordinary, mysterious part of our world. But it is one of my favorite things. And I do recognize a lot your guest, Chris Marks, that you had on the part 2. I really highly recommend people listening to that because that is the truth. And how do I know that? I've had very similar experiences in places just like Skinwalker Ranch. And one of those places is near Mount Shasta. I can't really give out the location. It's on private property. But there is a place like that near Mount Shasta. And I spent 8 years in it. I documented it. I mapped it. And I was sent instruments to measure the energies there. And what we find in these places, let's call them Earth's power spots. What we find in these places is they're located on a magnetic anomaly. They have very special geology. They have high mineral content. They have underground water. Generally, there's a lot of granite or crystalline stone. And the magnetic anomalies are flooded with telluric energy. So telluric energy is like electricity. And if you want to know about energy, study water. It moves over the land like water. So when your friend Chris was saying, sometimes it's asleep, sometimes it's awake, that's very true. I think that the geology can change with underground water moving and so forth. And also we're affected by the cosmos. So as different energies come in from the cosmos, and I'm not talking about the airy-fairy kind, I'm talking about like photons and different showers of things that come in from deep space, that also affects the land and electrifies it. All the things that I mentioned are conductive. So you get electric and magnetic, which means electromagnetic frequencies, and that's where all of this stuff happens. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't nuts and bolts things flying around out there that are very much in the physical or matter state. Our governments have things. I'm not an expert on it. You guys are, but I'm not saying those things don't exist. I mean, I'm fairly certain they would exist if I use logic and reason. But there's a whole nother aspect to this that's that you could say is spiritual. And I'm not talking about religious spiritual. I'm talking about energetic intelligence that seems to be a part of our reality that often, because we live in an age of Newtonian science and quantum physics is fairly new, we're not able to wrap our minds around that or accept it. So the place that Chris was talking about is a power place. And these places, I guess the best way I could say it is stuff happens there. And it's like everything but the kitchen sink. So usually when I talk to people and they say, oh, I had an experience with a UFO in the sky, it was really amazing. And I'll say, well, what else have you experienced? And they won't say anything. And then I'll push a little harder, and pretty soon I hear about orbs and Bigfoot and something else. And, it's everything but the kitchen sink. And often there are some of us that are more open and intuitive and receptive to this. Maybe they have a strange attractor built into them. And other times, I generally have to think that if people aren't telling me they saw more than one thing, then they're probably not being honest with me. There's a lot of stigma attached to that. If I were to come out on your show, it'd take me probably 20 hours to tell you every story I have. And people would say I was SHIT crazy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when I hear about Skinwalker Ranch and I have my own experience where I was for 8 years, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And it's all about consciousness. Your consciousness influences these places. And there's a very specific reason.
Good point. Good point.
It can be just plain perception. We have different perceptions because our five senses, they're all universal, but they're also unique to us depending on our state of mind. But it also has to do with our consciousness in a way that if we're open to it, or the best way I can explain it is within alchemistic philosophy, There's a very famous polymath and alchemist named Robert Flood, and he drew many diagrams. You can look them up on the internet under Robert Flood's Celestial Spheres, I think it's called. And it shows all the realms of spirit. And so it's like a layer cake. So you have there's a bottom layer, and then another layer, and then another layer, and another layer, and it goes all the way up to, he uses the metaphor of angelic realms or celestial realms. But it starts in, if you were to think of something that was a very low frequency or a very angry emotion, that would be at the very bottom. That's where we get the mythology of demonic activity or what have you. And it goes all the way up through these realms, according to alchemistic philosophy, where there are realms of existence. So if you're going into a power place and you're feeling very elevated and very illuminated and very up and very happy, you're going to go in and you're going to have a beautiful experience. So if what I'm saying is true, if you go in looking to slay the dragon or do battle, oftentimes you'll have a terrifying experience. And so then we have the reports of, man-eating monsters coming after people or what have you.
Or it'll just mess with you.
So now I know I'm putting out a lot of information, but I kind of have to before I, engage in an actual conversation with you guys. But just bear with me for a second. So in the language of nature, if Hermetic philosophy is telling me the truth, if alchemistic philosophy is telling me the truth, if the mystery traditions are telling me the truth, and you have to remember that these are people who for thousands of years did what science does today. They observed, they experimented, they documented, and they passed that stuff down, and they wrote it down so we can read it in hieroglyphs and Sumerian cuneiform and et cetera, et cetera. So these people researched this. And what they found was there is a language that nature speaks in a language, and we call it the green language, the language of the birds, that's a metaphor, or nature's language. And it's also called the forbidden language because it was very occulted. So you'll see some of it in masonry, some of it will pop up in runic symbolism, hieroglyphs. I think it has a basic Egyptian root. But what it does is it's based on nature itself. So let's say nature speaks in symbols and emotions. So those frequencies that I was talking about are related to also emotions. So the planes rise up higher and higher with your higher emotions. So if you want to go into one of these places and you want to make communication happen with the spiritual world, if you believe it exists, you go in with a certain emotion and then you listen and pay attention. You ask a question, you listen and you pay attention, but the most important thing to remember is to pay attention because it'll answer you with symbolism, metaphor, allegory. For example, in the Egyptian hieroglyph, the hawk, if that was a word or a letter, the hieroglyph, it's a picture of a hawk. It just means hawk. But it also means the Horus hawk or the god Horus. And who is Horus? He is the rising sun. He is rebirth. He's also the hawk that flies above, the hawk of wisdom. So it's a Horus hawk point of view when you fly above the world. So it has many levels of meaning. So when you go into these places, you almost have to become a mystery student or a mason or an alchemist, to understand the symbolism of how these things answer you. So I know that sounds really deep and confusing, but it really isn't because you're wired to understand the language of nature. You're a part of nature. So I hear about Skinwalker Ranch and the experiences, these horrible experiences, and then I hear Chris Marks, who gives a very honest account, and I can hear in his voice that he's a person who walked in respecting the land, he was in a higher state of consciousness, and he had beautiful experiences, and he made communication and he made friends. So if you believe the spiritual world exists, now insert the term ultra-terrestrial instead of spirit. So where do spirits come from with all these realms and frequencies? Do they come from quote unquote outer space? Or are they coming from here? Or like the ancient people would say, it's not this or that. Usually it's both or all. So it's a really complex subject. So I'm kind of getting lost in my own tapestry here that I'm weaving.
I am getting lost in your tapestry as well. And I love that. And I mean, to have you say that about Chris's experiences. I mean, he was so respectful and he was, I think a lot of times you look at other people that maybe were involved in that project that went on there with this air of arrogance, and they weren't. And as a result, you get different things that will happen or follow you home, or equipment that that malfunctions and things. And so I guess you're absolutely right. It is all about the energy that you put into something when you go into a place like this.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for when you go in a lower state, you're basically walking into a power spot. And power spots, by the way, 100% of all sacred sites are built upon them for a reason. So when you walk into them, if you walk in a lower state, so again, the language of nature is emotion and symbolism, frequency. So they're walking in a lower state of mind, and they're basically saying to the spirited place or the place itself, hey, I need to go through some dark, shadow work, Jungian shadow work, or what we call shamanic dismemberment, where it takes you into the darkest place where you face your fears and you dump that garbage, and that raises you in consciousness. That's a tradition that goes through the Eleusinian mysteries. We see it in solvent coagula without alchemy. We see it in shamanic dismemberment. You see it in biblical teachings. Most people don't see it, but if you have the background that I have, you see it. So it is the language of nature, and when you go in a low emotion, or you're angry or filled with rage or whatever, you're going to face that. So these places are, if your worldview is that the universe, everything in the universe is consciousness and is conscious, they're answering you because you're speaking their language. When you go in with an emotion, you're saying something. You're saying, here's what I'm here to do, or here's what I'm here to experience or learn. So these are like living symbols to me. I'm not saying they're not autonomous and conscious. I really think they are. But they're also a part of a greater, more complex thing. And this comes from the ancient texts and the ancient teachings. And, it's like pieces of the puzzle. So you kind of have to look in so many places. It's just a lifetime of looking and searching for answers. I can't say I have the answers. And ancient people didn't say they had them either, but I think they probably had a better answer than we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're getting ready to go to break, but I want to say that it's been interesting for me to go all over the world and to visit these power spots. And I mean, you can see a change in a person when they go onto this, into this place. And some people can handle it and some people can't. And it can be very subtle or very overwhelming. And it's just amazing. I want to talk more about that with Chris as well when we get back from the break. But thank you both for being here. I'm here with Chris O'Brien, who is one of my favorite authors and super spicy. Love his direct approach to everything. And I'm here with the beautiful Eira Wulfnothsson, and she has a website called heartunafraid.com, so you can check that out. We will be back on the other side of the break.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Toxins are everywhere, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the water we drink. In a world where 80,000 known toxins and heavy metals threaten our very existence, how are you going to protect yourself and your loved ones? Introducing Pure Body Extra Strength, the world's first colloidal zeolite that helps trap and remove toxins as well as heavy metals from your body that are messing with your memory, clarity, sleep, and focus. Don't just take our word for it or the testimonials from our thousands of happy customers. Check out the hundreds of articles and case studies on the National Institute of Health website proving zeolite's powerful ability to remove toxins. For a limited time, listeners to KCOR will receive 10% off their first order. To get started, go to trypurebody.com and enter promo code RADIO10. Again, that's trypurebody.com. Toxic junk is all around us, but now you can take back control of your health and protect yourself by detoxing with Pure Body Extra Strength. You'll be on your way to sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and feeling more energetic. Go to trypurebody.com right now and get started today.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
In the shadows, a voice cries out. Evidence that you're not alone.
You said my name. What is your name?
Proof that the living and the dead coexist. Or do they? Every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, join writer, producer, and paranormal investigator Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio as he explores, interviews, and investigates evidence alongside some of the best in the paranormal community and beyond.
6 people killed.
Ghost Box Radio, Wednesday nights exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, because the dead don't sleep. Ghost Box Radio.
We interrupt to bring you this.
Would you like to advertise on KCOR Digital Radio Network?
This is what I'm talking about.
At a fraction of the cost of traditional radio advertising, why not?
Tell them the good news.
Whether you need to promote your next book, product, or service, we can customize a package for just about any budget.
Finally, there is hope for the hopeless.
Why limit yourself to a tiny local market when KCOR can brand you to the world?
Here's all you do.
Visit KCORradio.com or contact our sales department by email at saleskcorradio.com.
We want it now!
See the difference with us by letting us work for you.
This ain't reality TV!
The KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Are you ready to go?
It's showtime!
You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Crank this up.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Their base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back. Happy Fantopia Friday. I'm Erica Lukes. Happy to be here with my friends. I want to thank everybody for getting into chat, asking questions, for supporting the show. UFO Classified is a listener-supported show, and I appreciate Mike and in Northern and all of the people and Doug who help keep the show on the air. You mean the world to me. Thank you very much for your contributions. It is never a dull moment, and I wish sometimes you could hear what goes on the break, because we had a very rousing conversation about mics going into places that maybe they shouldn't, and various and sundry things. I have to tell you, being a musician, a singer, have been known to walk off stage with a cordless mic and take a little journey, and sometimes that doesn't work out for you. Yeah. But anyway, I'm digressing, but it's a lot of fun. I'm here with Christopher O'Brien, who has been on the show many times. He is a great author and researcher, and I'm here with Eira Wulfnothsson. I love that name. It's just very creative and beautiful. And Eira is an alchemist and a member of the International Alchemy Guild. She studied Hermeticism and has studied Earth's power spots, which is, for us who look into UFOs, it's a place like Skinwalker Ranch, if we don't know about window areas or places that have been studied like Norway. You've heard me talk about that a lot. The Yakima Indian Reservation, which, just to bring up, next week, Greg Long, who extensively studied Yakima, is going to be on my show, and that will be really good. But I love the fact that we've all come together, thanks to Chris, and that both of you have you have really progressive views on what we're dealing with in these power spots. And I think that that's needed, because we're so black and white. sometimes, especially in ufology. It has to, has to be science, UFO, it's extraterrestrial, and we're not looking at the bigger aspect of things.
Yeah, really good point. I think it's important to be as open-minded and just not set in stone about anything. I think we all have to be very light on our toes and ready to move forward, backward, or sideways, or up or down at a moment's notice. I think as soon as you try to pigeonhole what it is that you're looking into, you're investigating, then you've kind of already lost, because as soon as you put all your eggs in one basket and decide to attempt to define something, it will throw you a curve, and the tricksterish nature of these types of phenomena will just constantly throw you loops. And so I think it's important always to be malleable and ready to move in any direction, or they're just going to run, like you said, they're going to run circles around you.
And so let's talk about the trickster, because there are people that are listening to the show that probably have no idea what that is.
Well, it's what we were talking about before when Eira was talking about people telling her a story, let's say about a sighting, and then they don't talk about something else that happened until maybe later. Then they confess to additional information. Usually what that additional information is something that's so inexplicable and unexplainable that I think witnesses are oftentimes, they feel reluctant or reticent or shocked enough not to mention it, because they want people not to think they're crazy, or they want people to take them seriously. And if they mention that one aspect of the experience, it's going to make the rest of it look crazy. So I've had people, 2 years later, come up and say, hey, remember, that first time we met and I told you about this, that, and such? Well, there's something I left out. And it's only when they feel comfortable enough to tell you the whole story and know that they're not going to be judged, that they invariably will come up and generally it's some inexplicable, mind-blowing, element or aspect that just makes you just, scratch your head and go, what? And that's the stuff I really like. And that could be attributed to a trickster-like phenomenon. The trickster is one of a constellation of archetypes that all people in all countries and cultures share. The most basic ones, of course, are the shadow, the mother, the child, the trickster, the king, the queen, the god, the goddess, the mandala.
Loki.
There's about 24 archetypes, as they're called, that exist in all cultures. And even though we might individually not be aware of these archetypes, the trickster, for instance, has been mostly lost in the West. The only real vestiges that we have of the trickster in our culture is Halloween, masquerade balls, dressing up and putting on masks. Some other things, clowns are actually originally trickster figures. The fool in tarot is a trickster figure. Native American cultures are very big on trickster figures, whether it's Raven or the Great Hare or Coyote. Of course, in the Southwest is a big one. Ravens and crows oftentimes. And if you go around the world, you'll find that animal forms are often anthropomorphized into trickster figures that are involved with changing nature inadvertently, and it benefits humans. Prometheus gave us fire, Loki gave us the fishing hook, Anansi gave us the story, the oral tradition. Raven brought darkness out of light. The Kappas in Hawaii created land where there was only ocean. So all these, if you start looking at all these various trickster figures around the world, they all have commonalities. And generally when something happens that just is totally out of left field. Totally doesn't make sense. The trickster invariably is involved in somehow is active and is helping throw trickster gas on the fire, as it were.
I think all of the paranormal lexicon is a manifestation of the universal archetype of the trickster, really. I mean, when people see UFOs or alien abduction, all these things leave us confused, and we try to recapture that or prove it to our friends. And all it ends up doing is being a very personal experience, which is just a story to the rest of the world, even with photographs. And it forces us to reach and study and grow and evolve in consciousness. So it seems as if it serves a purpose. And, you know, I have to bring up Jacques Vallée because his work was instrumental in really bringing this out into the public consciousness about the UFO phenomenon or the paranormal phenomenon. That it has to do, that it's built into nature, that it's random for a reason. I mean, I look at Uri Geller, and I know this is a man that can do things. I know you can bend spoons with your consciousness. I've done it. So I look at Uri Geller, and he goes on Johnny Carson years and years ago, and they put him on the spot, and nothing happens. But then he'll do something else, and you're in a room of close friends, and everything happens. So this is how this phenomenon seems to behave across the board. It's random, and it's random for a reason. It doesn't perform at the circus. In the first page of the Book of Henday, it says, the mysteries protect themselves. And that's why we call them the mysteries. I try not to use the word paranormal or supernatural. I mean, I just say these things are the mysteries. I mean, that's what people called them for thousands and thousands of years.
And so when you look at a place like Skinwalker and you listen to Chris Marks and hear all of the different experiences that he had there, and specifically his great story about the shapeshifter up on the ridgeline. I mean, what are your thoughts about that and shapeshifters?
Yeah, well, you know, I don't like to use the word shaman, but the only way I can explain this is when you go into these places, they're initiating you, you know, they're kind of shamanizing you. I don't like that word, but to describe something like that. But when you go into these places, they change you, and they change you not just in spirit, but they also change you physically. You know, I have had experiences where most people would say, well, that was an alien abduction. And I will say, well, it was a spiritual abduction from me because the symbolism within it, at the time I didn't understand. But when I look back on it, it was very Masonic, which is very ancient Egyptian, which goes back to the first, you know, if you're into alternative history, the earliest civilization, the serpent people or Shamsu-Hor. But you know, there were physical fingerprints left on me. I don't mean fingerprints. I mean, there were physical things on my body that were left in very specific places, which one of them was on my right temple. And it was an inexplicable burn. I mean, the way it happened felt like a dream, but it happened in ordinary reality. You know, I can share the story if you want, but it's a good 5 minutes to share.
No, that would be wonderful.
Well, at 3 years old, I would go in the living room and beings of light would drift through the ceiling. Now, before you think I'm just a crazy nutcase, I was only 3, and I would tell my mother, Mom, the white people are here again. And she would say, oh, don't worry, they'll go away. She was very calm about it. And that same year, my mother took me to Bohemian Grove, and I was shown all of the props and capes and materials that they keep. I was shown the young boy that was wrapped in the sack. It's a mock sacrifice. So my family had a tie to Bohemian Grove. I was born on the Feast of Nemeralia, which is the date that Bohemian Grove was dedicated. So how does this relate to a UFO abduction? I have no idea.
Can you, because most people, in fact, this is really interesting that you mentioned Bohemian Grove because I was talking about it a couple of days ago. And a lot of people don't, even people live in San Francisco, don't have a freaking clue what it is. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the Manhattan Project was hatched there. The membership is presidents, senators, the movers and shakers, members of Skull and Bones, Freemasonry, the highest levels. And it's also the wealthiest of the wealthiest in our country. I don't know if it's the same today, but I am over 50 years old. Back in those days, when I would be 3, it was the secret society's universal meeting place. So the Grove, people have a very strange idea about the Grove. Again, as Chris Marks said on your show, people put this very dark connotation on it. Yes, there are dark Luciferians in the world, but Luciferianism itself is about light magic. And the Grove seems to have a theme for that. But actually, it's dedicated to Diana. And in ancient Egypt, the owl itself is the word for comfort. And it's also the story of Arachne, right? And so it's not exactly what people think it is. Although there are bad people there, I'm sure there's bad people everywhere. And yes, it's not good to control the population or, the types of ceremonies they do with the cremation of care is an interesting thing, because people that go and they are witness or party to the cremation of care, it's a very interesting thing, because in the Hermetic principles, the 8th unspoken principle is care. So cremation of care ceremony that you see, it's very famous. That ceremony is actually removing care from the people, if you were to look at it as a magical ceremony. So you're rendering people impotent, really, to do magic when you do that. Therefore, you can just control them. I don't know if these people know that that's what's happening to them, or if they even believe in magic. It's none of my business. But
it's just a bunch of boys peeing, seeing who can pee the furthest in the woods.
Yeah,
basically.
And it's very
a lot of
it's very eclectic,
infantile, and they really don't know what they're doing. Would be my guess. Like the Masons, a lot of Masonic lodges go through the rituals, and they've lost the actual reason why they do it.
Yes, I agree with that. So people are doing things that, if I look at it from my point of reference or my point of understanding, that's what I see. Whether they know they're doing it or not, I really have no idea. So with that said, the people of light at 3 years old would drift down to the ceiling, and then suddenly my mother's taking me to, I guess, an expert. I don't know. I don't know what happened there to me. I have no memory of anything happening. But moving on, throughout my life, I would be in contact with these beings. They would show up at certain, moments in my life when I was very distraught or very frightened. I grew up as a child that was pretty much alone. It could have been they were comforting me. So in 2005, I was watching a television show about life on other planets and how life could get here. And I was making a sandwich, and I was alone in the home with my 2 dogs. And I started hearing the hum, and I wasn't sure what that hum was, so I ignored it. But I asked a question. I started visualizing in my mind, how would people get here from another planet? And I started visualizing the Milky Way galaxy, and then our solar system, and then our planet, and then our continent, all the way down, reduce down to the roof of my home. And then the hum started to happen. And my television started to mess up. And, this was a few hours after I had watched that television program, but I was consciously asking the question, how could this happen? When my television started to screw up, this was in 2005, so it wasn't like we have the same technology that we have today. So I was behind it, trying to plug it in, unplug it, look at it, what's going on. And suddenly I became very, very groggy and very tired. And the hum was continuing. So I looked out the window, I opened the garage door, and I became groggier and groggier until I was looking at my dogs, and the room was starting to spin. And my dogs were laying down and going to sleep. So I'm in my bedroom, and down the hallway to the garage are, quite a few doorways. There was a bathroom doorway lining the hall, some bedroom doorways. And I suddenly heard the garage door open. It slammed open. And then like a roll-off, one at a time, bam, 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 coming closer to my bedroom. These doors were just slamming open. It got to my bedroom door, and when the door slammed open, I had virtually hit the floor. I had passed out. And I pulled myself up to go to the bathroom counter because I knew there were two phones there. One was my cell phone and one was a landline. And I remember dialing the landline and saying, I heard the voice say, 911, what is your location? And I couldn't get through, or they couldn't hear me, or they couldn't locate me. And I threw the phone down on the ground, and I'm like staggering to hold on to the counter, and I dial my cell phone, and the same damn thing happens. And suddenly I'm feeling this terrible pain in my left eye, and my eyes rise up to the mirror, and there's like a vice in my eye. I mean, this is so bizarre. You can't even make this shit up. And I have a vice in my eye, and it's painful. It's burning my eye. And as I go to grab that thing in my eye, I just lose consciousness, and everything goes dark, and I'm just floating. And suddenly, I'm there. I'm in a place that's like green rolling hills with sheep grazing. There's a man and a boy on a horse riding by, and the little kid looks at me and smiles, and I smile back. And the dad goes, "Don't look at her. She's not supposed to be here." But I'm standing at the entrance to a great keep. And this place was super, super advanced, but super ancient. I couldn't put a finger on, was this the future? Was this another planet? Was this the past? It was very unique. And as I entered, it had so much Masonic symbolism that at the time I wasn't really aware of. It was the black and white checkered floor. It was, the two Masonic columns. It had the steps leading up to the upper chambers. And as I walked in, there were a lot of people, male figures that were up in a mezzanine. And I was a little bit, I don't know if I should go up there, but here come my dogs. They go running up the stairs, and I'm thinking, whoever is creating this screen image or this vision or whatever I'm doing in this dream, they knew enough to put my dogs in it because they knew I would not go up those steps. But I followed my dogs up to the steps. And in the mezzanine area, there was a lot of men dining and talking. And I looked at one, and he goes, "It's so good to see you again." And I'm like thinking, I don't know any of these people. And I should have been really frightened, but there was no fear in me whatsoever. And that almost felt artificial to me. But I went up into the top chamber, into this very, very dark room. And I should have gone to my knees, because what was inside of this dark chamber that my dogs entered and I followed was a being that was 7-8 feet tall, very lithe, beautiful alabaster skin, elongated skull, big black wraparound eyes. And I'm in a dark room, and he was softly glowing from within. So I could see the vein going through the vessels, his blood vessels beating, his beating heart. Very, very subtle. And this being spoke about time. I can't to this day tell you what was said. I understood, but I didn't understand. And the oddest part of all this is when I was 3 years old, those beings of light that were fully turned up, that were floating around the living room, spoke about time. And the one sentence that I remember them saying over and over when they would come through, they would say, "It's not time yet." So this experience for me, when I came out of this dream vision, I don't know how long it lasted, but it was dark. I woke up on my own bed in my room. My dogs were rousing and walking around, and I had a burn on the lower lid of my eye and a burn on the right temple of my head and a burn on the right side of my leg. And when I went to the doctor for these burns, I was told, "Oh, that's autoimmune disease." Now, for it to come out like that, maybe it was just autoimmune disease, but I have had it ever since.
Well, that doesn't make sense. Where did they come up with that?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't exactly tell them. Yeah, this was an alien abduction experience, ultra-terrestrial abduction.
Well, I've never heard of autoimmune disease manifesting as symptoms of like a burn.
So it gets weirder. It gets weirder. So this was, to me, with the Masonic symbolism, when I look back on it, it was really setting me onto the right path. That is a very traditional mystery school teaching, getting onto the right path and opening yourself up to the mysteries, because the thing on the right side of my temple, it still comes back whenever I get too intellectual. Whenever I find myself in a very spiritual place where I'm living and examining the mysteries, it goes away. When I come back into rules and doctor's appointments and people and schedules, it comes back. It's like clockwork. And the same thing with my eye. It's my left eye. And they said, if you continue to not use the medication and not treat it, you'll eventually go blind in your left eye. So all throughout history, people who are to see through the right intuitive aspect of their consciousness or their minds, they are usually depicted with their left eye gouged out, blinded, missing. There's some symbolism to that, which is saying, this is your place, this is your thing to do. Go study it. Yeah. Go learn about it. Go share it. So it's very Masonic in symbolism, and that was the most interesting part of it to me. And also, it left me physical somethings to say, yeah, that was a real experience. Because if I were to describe it, really, it was a visionary, dreamlike experience. And yet the phones were on the floor. Both phones were on the floor when I came back to consciousness. So it's the strangest thing that you could ever imagine. But, I've had so many strange things my entire life, not every day, but, sometimes years would go by where nothing happened. But I've had some really bizarre things that relate to that kind of, UFO stuff.
Wow. And I have some bizarre stuff that relates to the other hidden mystery school sort of activity stuff.
Love activities and mystery school stuff.
So do we get to talk about that after the break?
Yeah, I'll tell you one or two. They're pretty nice.
All right.
Mind warping.
Well, we need a little mind warping on a Friday night. So I'm here with Chris O'Brien and Eira Wulfnothsson. And if I'm being too dramatic when I say Eira,
no, it's okay.
Oh my God, I know. I just love it. But anyways, so we will be right back, and make sure you ask questions, Karen. I know you asked a couple questions, and we will get to those when we get back. Stick around. The best is yet to come.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news. KCOR Las Vegas.
All the time.
Of course I listen.
I listen all day. It's the best music.
KCOR, the new underground source for news, talk, and music at KCORradio.com. Tell your friends, email them, or Facebook them, or Twitter them.
Hey, are we done here? Because I'm losing my buzz.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the second half of UFO Classified. Erica Lukes, always happy to be here. You can find me at ufoclassified.com or ericalukes.com. On Facebook, Twitter, which I really hate tweeting, so maybe it's like a once in a year kind of thing. Instagram, yada, yada. I try really hard to be on top of my social media, but clearly I need somebody to keep track of me. But anyway.
A 10-year-old.
Oh my seriously. They have so many skills. I do not have those skills.
I know.
Good God. Yeah, I don't know. I'm telling you. But so I'm back with Chris O'Brien, who from 92 to 2002 investigated over 1,000 paranormal events in the San Luis Valley in central Colorado, which is central Colorado, north central New Mexico. And, this is an amazing place, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. But Chris has written a lot of books that I really hold in high regard. Secrets of the Mysterious Valley is one of them. And so Chris, thank you for co-hosting with me, and thank you for introducing me to our guest of honor this evening, Eira Wulfnothsson. I know, and you could just stop me when I do that pronunciation. I can't help myself. Now I feel like I don't know what. I feel like I don't know what.
Perfectly chosen for the radio person to announce. They all want to kill me.
I love it though, but I'm so happy to know you and to learn from you.
Thank
and
you
you're
so
talking
much.
about these alchemy and these sacred sites and the power spots, which is Skinwalker Ranch, which is Yakima, Norway. There's so many places all over the world.
Yes, they're everywhere. And the ancient people used to say that they were like a place where you went for an adjustment, a psychological adjustment. So 100% of our ancient cathedrals, sacred sites, Stonehenge, Dolmens, all those places are built on them.
Yep.
Pyramids,
and
pyramids.
From one civilization to the next, they appropriate them from the people that were there before them.
Yeah.
And they, that's why most of your great cathedrals are built on the site of ancient oak groves, and also places where there were standing stones and other evidence of prehistoric knowledge. And, there's churches on top of dolmens, on top of graveyards, on top of standing stones, and it's interesting when they do archaeological digs in some of these sites, they're amazed at how consistent the usage has been throughout the millennia, and I think it's not by accident.
No doubt in my mind that the ancient people were geomancing the land and then harnessing or increasing the energies of these places, these anomalies. But the priesthood, the Catholics and all of those people that came into Mexico and Mesoamerica and such, they were dowsing the land to see where the best places were. And that's when they would build on top of, they'd take over and build on top of the indigenous pyramid or the Tor or all over the world. Those were valuable places. Then the granite altar in the center of those churches was conductive, and the altar is what alters us. So in these places, one of the most fascinating aspects of them is we know from scientific studies that high EMFs alter your consciousness. So you go into that sweet spot to perceive what perhaps you normally don't perceive, right?
Yeah, and each one is tuned to a particular frequency, which then dictates the kind of use that the site generally will receive, and what the site is good for in terms of the ritual life of the people that live there. And they were able to divide these sites up, I think, in a way that made particular sites way more useful and way more utilitarian for particular purposes. And I really do have a sense, and I'm sure many people out there who've done their share of reading in these subjects I'm sure people would agree that there is a whole body of knowledge that has been lost to the majority of folks in the modern era. There may be vestiges of this knowledge at the core of secret societies, at the core of ancient lineages, at the core of spiritual belief systems and whatnot. But for the most part, the average person has so many levels that they just do not have access to anymore. And if they do, it's always gatekeepers that stand in the way and try to dictate your connection with your own divinity. And unfortunately, that's been the way it is. And I think we're seeing now in the modern era, things are coming full circle. And the work of people like Eira and others, I think, is bringing that to the light and allowing the stigma to be finally lifted from professing interest in these subjects. Who wants to get burnt at the stake or dunked in the river until they drowned to prove that they're not a witch? I think it's improving slowly but surely.
And so I have to ask you, because you talk about the gatekeepers, do you think that, and this is kind of going off topic here, but I mean, not to me, but do you think that DeLong and that group, To the Stars Academy, are they gatekeepers, so to speak?
Yeah, I would. That wasn't real. I was speaking more of priests, the priest class, and the people that stand, right, between you and your access to your divinity. But in the same sense, sure, people like DeLong, Robert Bigelow, even in a lesser way, people like Jacques Vallée, who hold a lot of secrets they don't release and share quite a majority of their work, actually. Yes, they are gatekeepers in their own way, and I think that's not necessarily a good thing. I think there are some secrets that should be secret. I think there are sets of information that should not be shared by the great unwashed masses, as it were. But when it comes to your own connection to your own divinity and how that express elevator to your own higher self and your higher energies, I don't think there should be any gatekeepers at all in that process. When it comes to information, when it comes to politics, and when it comes to things of the earth, the firmament, then perhaps gatekeepers are appropriate, but not when it comes to things that have to do with your own connection to spirit.
Speaking of gatekeepers, that brings me back to Chris Marks again, which that thing, just his conversation fascinated me. But he talked about the wolves down by the river. Remember, Erica?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And all throughout history, the wolf or the canine, especially if you look at Anubis in the Egyptian tradition, was the shower of the ways, the waykeeper, the gatekeeper. And so you see that universal symbolism with canines and wolves as the keepers of the gates, right? So it's really odd to me symbolically, or in universal archetypes, that those wolves would even be seen there. And also in the area that I spent those years in, there was a wolf, and it was in an area where there were no wolves. So I never quite knew if I was seeing a spiritual or etheric wolf, or if I was seeing a real wolf. But it was there, and it was large, and it was red. So there's a lot of similarities that seem to pop out of these places, these sacred or powerful places. I know some people don't like you to use the word sacred for them, but, sorry. I don't know how else to describe it. But also, the giant floating balls of light. I'm not talking about an orb. I'm talking about a huge car-sized shining light that looks like an airplane landing, but from the side it looks like an airplane landing, and from underneath it looks like an airplane landing. When I was in that area, I watched at 5:30. I actually reported it to MUFON in I think it was 2011, maybe it was February 3rd. It came from the north and came slowly and silently, a couple of 100 feet, got over my house. It was the same light from underneath, from the side. It passed by me. It flew over a lake, silent, slow, and then it flew into the side of Mount Shasta and just blinked out. And this light was nothing like I had ever seen. It wasn't like a plane light. It wasn't like a light on the outside of someone's house. The only way I can describe this light was it was angelic, like a diamond in the sun. It had every color but no color. It was an incredible supernatural light. It was like a light that was produced by something that was not of this earth, or was of this earth, but from another, reality of this earth. So that was something that was seen at Skinwalker as well. And, I'm not an expert on every power place in the world. I truly am not. There are other people that do that. I focused on my own experiences in the place that I was in. But the more stories I hear of Skinwalker, it's like, it seems to be a pattern. It seems to be a theme in these places. And there we are as, having our UFO researchers there, like, what are these things? And then you have someone like me look at it, or someone like Chris who experiences it, where it is a thing of consciousness. It is Jacques Vallée's, it behaves more like a thought than a nuts and bolts thing. It's very, very strange.
And so since you lived in an area for 8 years and you were studying all of this, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and what your experiences were and what you learned using science.
It was like, I'm not a scientist. So I grew up with a lot of exposure to the local archaeology. So I was like an on-the-ground scout. I was going into an area with a lot of rattlesnakes. It was wilderness. It was very rough terrain. It was straight up and down. There were huge megaliths naturally made. And there were other structures. And I don't want to really identify those structures, because in doing so, then people will know the location. But these structures were man-made. They were very ancient. No indigenous people claim them. No farmers claim them. No one knows what they are. But the land is held privately. So when I went in, I was photographing archaeology and photographing these places. And then I was sent a tri-field meter to take the energetic readings. So I went through that. But right away, I started having things happen to me, which I didn't expect. These things don't happen to me in shopping in Walmart. I don't have time slips in the bathroom at my house. But when I was in this very highly charged place, things would disappear. Like right before my eyes. I mean, it just sounds like I'm an absolute nutcase, but I would be having my lunch in an area that I had just photographed, and my dog bowl would just disappear. I'd carry a dog bowl and water for my dogs. My dogs were instrumental in locating things. They were like dowsing rods. They would take me to places that I never would have gone in that direction. It was like they knew I was hunting energy, and throughout thousands of years, dogs have hunted in tandem with whoever was working with them. So they caught on really quickly, and they could sense the energy. Their bodies were very sensitive. Our bodies are very sensitive. We can sense the energy of these places. But I would drop a leash and turn around, and the leash was gone. Or my dogs would disappear. And my dogs don't disappear. They don't just disappear. And they would be gone like an hour. And I'd be like, where are you? Where are you? Panicking. And I would say out loud to the land or to the spirited place, I'd say, please bring my dogs back, please. Suddenly they'd come out from behind a rock like they were sitting there the whole time doing nothing. And I didn't see them where I had looked, and they weren't there. So I'd have these strange experiences. It became like just another day at the office. And that did set me on the path years and years later, of all the things that I study. But I kept the document. I kept my documents of what was happening to me. And I wrote a book. And right before I was to publish that book on Amazon, I started to talk about it. And when I did, I started getting warnings in the email. I was stalked physically at my home, and I was told not to talk about it, basically. So there is something about a place like Skinwalker, because I know you said that Chris went through the same thing. He talks about it, and suddenly he gets attacked. So I never did publish that book. I will someday release it, but I had to take some time away from it because it just was mind-blowing. And this place was so strange. I would see a man standing on top of a hill. I can still describe his hair, what he was holding. He was in silhouette. He had very, very long hair. And I would run up that parabolic-shaped hill, which is a hill shaped like a pyramid. My dogs would run up with me, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, there's a guy up here. I'm going to go talk to him. He looks really handsome from the long hair. And I would go running up that hill, and I'd get to the very top of the hill, and all that would be in the top of that hill was feathers. or something like a rock with the feather wrapped around it, where I knew it was human hands that did it, but there was no human in sight. I could look 360 degrees around me. There were no trees. So, I had another experience where I was photographing a burial site, and I turned, and there was a man that was dressed in ancient indigenous clothing, and he saw me, and his eyes widened, and my eyes widened. I'm holding a camera, a tri-field meter. My dogs are running around in the bushes. And this man saw me, and I saw him. And he tried to be really cool and just turned casually, like got his composure, and he turned casually. And as he walked away, he walked into the ground as if he was walking down a hill that was no longer there. Like the land had changed that much. And I often wonder, what did he go home to his house and tell his family that he saw? I went home and told people, oh my flippin' gosh, I saw this man and he was dressed like this. And I know I had to have been in some sort of altered state, but that's what these places do to you. I was wide awake, I was conscious, I was working, I was thinking, and that is so rare and so unusual to be in that state, a waking, altered state. Unfortunately, I didn't have anyone to brain map me, and tell me what my brain was doing at that time, but I'm sure I was in gamma or, alpha or something.
So what kind of physical effects did you have? Because I know when I go to different places like Skinwalker Ranch or up, even in Norway or up in Washington State, it's like you come home and for me, there are physical symptoms that I experience.
I think it's different in different places. This place was clearly geomanced, so it was harnessed. Animals gave birth there. Animals spent time there. It seemed to be a place that had a very uplifting, healthy type of energy. I wasn't sick, that's why when I heard Chris talking about his experience, that was my experience. I felt great when I was out there. It's here in the city, now that I'm in this place, that I struggle to keep my energy up. I was so clear and so, I could write, and I could run up and down these hills. Literally run up and down 45-degree hills. And I was like running up and down them every day. My dogs were running up and down them. It was absolutely beautiful. It was almost as if some of these places are geomanced to uplift consciousness and increase health. I think the ancients knew how to do that. And it's very easy to geomance a site and harness that energy just by moving the conductive stones around or building certain structures. It's kind of like acupuncture for the land or feng shui out in the land, but with stones.
And so, Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Because we were talking, earlier about Skinwalker and San Luis Valley and how different the types of experiences people were having are.
That's a really good question, Erica. I've been asked several times how to equate one with the other. I think what you're dealing with there, south of Fort Duchesne, is real multifarious. There's elements that are impacting other elements. There's multiple players. There's multiple energies that seem to be at times working in concert with one another, at times in opposition to one another. In the San Luis Valley, it's much more natural and flowing. You don't really get a sense of agenda. The energy, for lack of a better term, or the vibe, if you will, seems more natural and pure, and it doesn't really abide trying to manipulate it, trying to fold, spindle, or mutilate. Remember that from when we were kids? Our computer cards do not fold, spindle, or mutilate. And I really get a sense that Skinwalker Ranch is totally different. There's so much going on. It's so complicated. I think there's psychotronic weapons are being used. There's gate openers, there's gate closers, there's hidden players, there's players that are out front and stating who they are, but they all have secret agendas. It's very convoluted and complicated. That's why I really I don't go out of my way to get involved in anything up there, and haven't for quite some time. I just think it's pure in the San Luis Valley. It's a much more pristine investigative environment. I can take you to a spot that just is squeaky clean and pure. That it's had no exploitation. It's had no hunting for this or stalking of that or anything like that. It's just there, humming away.
Are there any cairns there or?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a 1,200 foot long, a 3-headed snake that's 1,200 feet long.
Yeah,
that shouldn't be there.
Serpents are very predominant in the place I was in too. There were a lot of serpent structures that were man-made.
Yeah, and there's medicine wheels and cairns all over the place. That some of them go back to Folsom Man. So the highest known paleo evidence of paleo man in North America is just overlooking the valley.
You know, and I wanted to say before we go to break, because we've got just a couple minutes, but, you talk about these pristine places. And I think that unfortunately, Skinwalker has, there is something very profound there. Everybody knows that, but because you've got so many people that have tried to manipulate it, and then you've got all of these wild tales like Chris Marks spoke about that were very detrimental to the communities and to the mindsets, and then it creates these belief systems that aren't good for anybody. So there's so much there, and it's like, God, why not go to a completely different place that has pure, energy? I think that would be much healthier.
Well, it seemed like Chris had a healthy experience there, right? So I wonder, perhaps if it's your state of mind, the emotional state you're in, your consciousness, and remember it matches you to certain realms. And if you're in a higher state of consciousness, the lower realms wouldn't even perceive you. So that's when you get the floating lights.
Take a really quick break here. I'm Erica Lukes here with Chris O'Brien and Eira Wulfnothsson. I'll be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. What is our reality? An ever-evolving concept? An individual experience? Or just life? Tune in Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern for Our Reality, hosted by Violetta Vrankovich.
You guys ready for this?
Come join the movement each and every week as we explore a range of topics, from the ordinary to the extraordinary. Violetta will emerge your consciousness with unique concepts and guests, taking you to places no other show has ever dared to go.
Carefully designed to stimulate the mind.
Our Reality, hosted by Violetta Vrankovich. Live Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Our Reality.
Our Reality.
Changing the world, one topic at a time. At a time, at a time, at a time, at a time.
Are you ready? Ready to go inside the Matrix? Inside the Matrix.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Then tune in Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, as your host, Jimmy Brent, takes you deep inside the holographic Matrix.
Carefully designed to stimulate the mind.
Come explore a world of topics from technology, archaeology, spirituality, and so much more. Inside the Matrix will liberate you from the manipulated, parasitic entities of consciousness.
You guys ready for this?
It's time to claim your true natures as creative, divine beings inside the Matrix. Hosted by Jimmy Brent.
Who are we talking about?
Jimmy Brent. Live Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Inside the Matrix, investigating and analyzing the experience of life. Life. There is a world outside that which we live in, a realm where fact and fiction collide. The Paradigm Matrix. The Paradigm Matrix. Hosted by Willie Miranda, every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room.
The 1-hour show that will surely leave you hanging on the edge of the rabbit hole. The Paradigm Matrix explores a universe of topics from UFOs, cryptozoology, conspiracies, as well as all things paranormal.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed.
Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The Paradigm Matrix, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, where fact and fiction collide.
1, 2, 3, 4.
To the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
I love the way it sounds. Love the music. I listen all day.
The future of radio is here and now.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
I'm Erica Lukes here with the last segment of the show, and it's always with great sadness that I come back on, but I want to thank all of you for getting into chat, for listening, for spreading information out about the show. I get people from all over the world reaching out to me, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen and to want good information, because chances are you're just probably not getting it out there in mainstream ufology. I'm just throwing that out there. I am here with two people that I respect a great deal. Chris O'Brien, who has written a lot of books, an expert in cattle mutilations, and a very spicy lad, which I love that about him. He's been doing this for a long time. He's friends with Greg Bishop, who's one of my friends, and he's been on the show for a long time, and Nick Redfern, and all of these great people. And we're here with Eira, who is studied. She's an alchemist and has been researching specific power spots like Skinwalker Ranch and places that I have visited, and places that I think are incredibly important, where you see a lot of different things going on. And so I'm grateful to have both of you here tonight. So welcome back for our final segment. It just makes me so sad.
I have one more really fascinating story. It's a real quick one. So in the area that I was in, very much like Skinwalker, I was walking into the site. I was going to do my daily task, photograph, look for things, send it back to the office. And it was November. So usually things happen in November for some reason. That seems to be the month that everything kicks up. I don't know if it's because it's wetter and more conductive in the site. But I walked in and I was following an old wall, and my dog's alerted. And so I always think, I'm always looking at the tracks. Whatever area I'm in, I know every animal that's out there. And so I'm always looking for tracks. And I thought, oh my gosh, did I miss something? Is there maybe a mountain lion or a bear or something around the corner? And they were alerted. And when I followed their line of sight, moving slowly through a very thin copse of juniper trees, there was an orb the size of a car, but it was physical. It was matter. And it was floating above this wall, and it had the skin of an elephant. It was biological. And as it floated up to the top of the hill, silently, it just drifted up the top of the hill. It just phased out of existence. And I was so freaked out. I grabbed my dogs and I was not in the spiritual mode whatsoever, the mature spiritual mode. I just turned and grabbed my dogs and scurried back down that dirt road and out. And I didn't go back for a month. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. It was just, my dog saw it, I saw it. And in that same location, I would say a good 8 months later, it was very hot. It was summertime. I was walking out of the site. I turned to my right. And this is just so crazy. I turned to my right and I saw the head and shoulders. It was standing in a ravine of the classic Patty Bigfoot. And I looked at it. I had 2 cameras. I had a tri-field meter. I had a cell phone. And suddenly, for some reason, in my head, in my own voice, I hear, "You're hot, you're tired, you just want to go home. You're hot, you're tired, you just want to go home." And I turned and walked forward. I was hot, I was tired, I just want to go home. I look at my dogs, they're walking in front of me, tails down, heads down. They were hot, they were tired, they just wanted to go home. And home I went. And for 2 days, I had no memory of this event whatsoever. None. Wow. So for 2 days, my friend calls me, who's a Bigfoot fan, and she said something about Bigfoot, and I went, "Oh my effing God, I saw a Bigfoot. What happened to me?" I have no clue what happened to me. I don't know if I was dreaming it or, I was walking fully conscious coming out of the site. So these things in these areas, it is everything but the kitchen sink. It's like the Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. And I had a Bigfoot experience within sight of where you were.
Yeah.
Just kind of coincidentally.
Yeah. Were you hot and tired and just wanted to go home?
No, actually, it was cool and crisp, and we had to actually dig through a couple of snowbanks to get to the top of the logging road. We were the first ones up there that spring, and there was already somebody up there who did not like that we were there. So we got chased off.
Were you picking up any orbs in your photos? You and I had a conversation the other night about how orbs will start showing up. I would pick them up. The only photos that Fritz took was on the quarter-mile trail going from the end of the logging road up through the forest to tree line, basically, and they were huge. I mean, probably 15 feet around, diameter 10, 15 feet. Yeah, not a dust particle.
No, there was nothing. He took like 3 shots, I think, and there was no indication of any orbs, and we didn't see anything. Nothing alerted us to the fact that we were going to have the experience that we had.
Yeah, it never does.
Except for the smell, of course. When we smelled that, then all everything kind of kicked into motion.
I used to pick up a lot of orbs, before something would happen or on certain days when it was getting a little witchy-woo. And one thing, there's that old saying that you hear a lot today, the more you become aware of it, the more it becomes aware of you. I'm sure you've all heard that. And it's so true, because the more I focused on orbs, the more they showed up in my camera lens. And not only that, the more I focused on them, I started to see them with my own eyes, as if my brain was rewiring to accommodate what I thought was important.
Yeah, so when you start seeing them with your unaided eye, and they're not just artifacts of digital photographs, and especially at night with a flash, then you're really onto something, and you should just continuously stand in one place. Do not move. Everyone should stand in one place all animals, you should try to keep them under control. Do not allow anything to stir up the air. Yeah, right. And everybody just start snapping pictures.
I walked into a very large blue orb. It was enormous. And it seemed to be generated by this giant, I guess I would call it a mother stone, a large megalith. And I walked into it. And remember earlier in the conversation, I talked about emotion, that nature speaks in emotion and symbol. And so it was this beautiful blue orb, and I thought, I'm going straight for it. And I walked into it, and I felt the most intense emotion, this highly uplifting, loving emotion. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it was so strong that I actually shouted out loud, "Oh my God, I love you." You know, I'm by myself looking around like, oh, geez, I hope no one heard me do that. But
I'll tell you, if there had been a pair of ruby slippers and no place like home mantras, it would have been perfect.
Yeah, no, but this stuff just happens. And so
there's no place like home. No place like home.
Oh, hell. I mean, rolling in laughter if you were out there, for sure.
No. I always got my game face on when I'm out in the field. I'm the one shushing everybody else, telling them to be serious and focus and clear your mind. When you're in these places, people, you can find them. Everyone has one near them. You just have to know how to look and know where to look. When you go into these places, don't barge in. Make sure you slide in. Make it about a 10-minute process, and then try to keep your mind as clear of clutter and unnecessary or irrelevant chatter in your brain, in your mind, your inner voice. Try to calm that as much as you can, and then just be open. And that's you're going to invite in wonderful things if you're able to do that.
So in the mystery traditions, we talk about ritual. It simply boils down to it helps you with your intent and your focus. So indigenous people would always leave an offering, quote unquote. But when I go in, I see it as an exchange. So it's an energetic spiritual law. You want something, you leave something. You take something, you give something. So I always, even if it's just a strand of my hair, I'll go through that focus and that intent, that little silly ritual that a scientist would scoff at. But it's magic in every sense of the word. It does trigger things. So I noticed with Chris, I hate to keep bringing him up, but he was doing that.
Yeah.
He did. And I have to ask you, I mean, why would some people go in and do these rituals or try to provoke whatever it is and get no response?
Ignorance.
Well,
experiment? I don't know.
I think the whole thing was done bass-ackwards myself, and of course, Bass is the name of the corporate entity that was involved with Bigelow. But it really was bass-ackwards. The way NIDS went in there, it's like working with a horse. The old concept of breaking a horse to your will, that doesn't work in a focus area like that, or a bullseye sort of ground zero portal area like that. The only thing that really works is the whispering approach. Instead of being, breaking a horse, be a horse whisperer. Whisper to it. Establish a quiet dialogue that has very little action and motive strength to it. It's very, very inert and still. And if you can establish communication in those conditions, then things can grow organically from there. And as you said, it can be a give and take. It can become a more mutually rewarding, possibly, or mutually co-creative, relationship.
Well,
And but they didn't. They went in there. Trying to nail it down. And
I retract the statement ignorance. I didn't know you were talking about those people. I thought you were saying something totally different, so I take that back. But with reciprocity, is that the way? Am I saying that right? It's a tongue twister.
Reciprocity, yeah.
Right, yeah. So that's a spiritual law. We have physics laws, law of thermodynamics, etc. And then we have spiritual laws, which we didn't write those either. So there are certain spiritual laws, and that comes back to the language of nature again, or the green language. There are certain things that you do in order to interact in the spiritual world, because it's not in our world, really, but it is. It's invisible nature.
Well, and that's where you're getting into the Heisenberg effect and the observer actually changing that which is becoming observed. So if you're as still and as unobtrusive and you're eliciting change the least amount possible, then you're going to be able.
You're unfolding onto the quantum field where all of it exists,
and then it can unfold, and you can be there, and you won't be changing it as much.
In core shamanism, an anthropologist named Michael Harnray, he made a statement that always stuck with me. He said, "The spirits need us as much as we need them," and I want to add to that to manifest in our reality. So there is something about this collaborative union between human consciousness and the spiritual world in order for it to actually translate or bleed into our perception in the first place. I mean, you go to places like ESETI or Stephen Greer's groups or whatever, they're all using meditation, and they're all using, very specific methodologies that, we might laugh, but they get results. So, I mean, whatever you think of them personally is something else. But when you want to interact with this, there is a certain way to do it for real.
Yeah, I'll say.
And so I have to ask you, because we've got a question in chat about, using an EMF detector or specific pieces of equipment when you're going to go to these power spots. What would you recommend?
I was sent my instrument, and it's fairly old now. It's a tri-field meter. It gives you electric and magnetic, and it doesn't pick up like the kind of energy you have in your home. So it's not going to pick up a telephone wire or a body or things like that. It's all natural earth energies that it picks up. But mine's an Alpha Lab, and it has a coil, so it's more sensitive. It's an added feature that you would buy, I guess. I don't even know.
It's like an antenna.
It's like looks like a little pin on a cord, and you have to walk a certain way and face a certain direction to use it. It comes with instructions, but
I see. It's like a focused antenna.
Yeah, I was rather stupid when I first got it. I don't even think I was using it correctly, but it does pick up the energies, and what you'll find is the telluric energies are always above average, and they increase at certain times when this activity happens. I mean, everything happens in the EMF spectrum.
Well, and also things happen way in the low cycle acoustic spectrum too.
Yes.
Between 15 and 60 hertz, below the 60 cycle ground hum. Like when you plug something in and you hear a hum, that's 60 cycles. So anything from there down to the Earth mean tone, which is around 7 cycles, that's an important frequency range. Also a compass. Compasses react, and I've had very interesting deviations from from magnetic north around certain objects, around certain features in the land. Rock cairns occasionally will I've seen will deviate your compass. There's actually quite a number of things. Changes in humidity, changes in temperature, changes in barometric pressure. These types of things, not only in haunted site research, can come in handy to be indicative of or indicate that something's going on, but also out in nature as well. These same environmental conditions can ebb and flow and fluctuate in the face of telluric and other types of energies. Obviously, it would be nice to have an analog camera one that's not digital. And it would be even nicer to have a blazed grating, which is a device that allows you to separate incoming light from a light source, separate that light into its various constituent spectra, so you can look at the different wavelengths within the light. And if that is captured on film, that is a really good way to gain optical physics data from an event possibly or a location.
I love that, Christopher. I wish I had your mind. I wish I had, a science background. That is fascinating. I love that you know that stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. I know there's people that know a heck of a lot more than I do, but when you have your toolkit, it's good to know what tools to use. It's good to know when to use a hammer, when to use a screwdriver. It's also good to be armed with the knowledge that has never required equipment. Knowledge is really alone is and persistence is omnipotent. It doesn't matter how many tools you have if you don't have the state of mind and the connection to your awareness. No tool's going to help you.
We need a holistic approach to this, really.
Yeah.
And in ancient times, people were, both spiritual and scientifically studying things. So it was a very balanced time back then.
Well, how come all these TV shows totally forget half the equation? I have never seen a single TV show
They don't know
that's
about it.
outside, not in a haunted house. That that has somebody that has knowledge about, shall we say, the mystery sciences or the mystery schools, if you will.
I don't think they know about it. Honestly, it's still pretty, backwoods stuff for most people, but it does hold more answers than,
I would love to see a TV show like that had from A to Z full breadth.
So would Erica and I.
Ancient to the modern, and even try to get Douglas Trumbull, Mr. Special Effects Oscar man. 2001, Close Encounters, Blade Runner. Have him let us borrow his exotic energy detector that supposedly can read UFO skid marks. So when they've been there, they leave evidence behind, and you can. There's some sort of device allegedly that can detect this. Wouldn't that be cool to have UFODAP go ahead and have these exotic energy detectors? Oh man, that would be so much fun. I used to love.
I know a guy that does that.
What?
I know a guy that does that.
Yeah, I do too.
You know him better than I do. It's you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, I think the technology that you're engaging into the arena is really important. And boy, wouldn't I have loved to have had you and that technology out there, when I was having these very bizarre experiences, and we only hit the tip of the iceberg with me. I mean, I could go on for hours, like I said. I mean, this stuff was
8 years. It's amazing.
And I would have loved to have had some really advanced instrumentation or technology following me around. That would have been a luxury I can't even imagine. Back then, the best you could do was a dry field meter. I mean, cell phones rather
right. And which is a very, very useful and versatile tool, for what it does. I mean,
well, now they're even more sensitive.
We're only aware of like 1/10 of our vibratory reality. So
yeah, well, just take all 5 senses and realize that we're only getting tiny pieces of each of their capabilities. I mean, the Egyptians said we had something like 430 something senses.
Right. Wow.
that they would bring to life.
I did not know that.
Perfect. So, yeah, we're blind.
Well, we just have a limited band of awareness. Some of us can flex our spiritual and psychic muscles a little bit more than others, but like everything, if you want to have the skill, you got to work it out. You want to look good, you got to work out.
And I think we have to remember too that this is so complex. I mean, like we talked about in the beginning of the show, yes, there's probably nuts and bolts, things flying around that are governmental or maybe even from outside of our solar system. I have no clue. But then there's that spiritual aspect. And there's something in alchemy. It's called prima materia. And it is part matter and part spirit. And I often wonder if some of these things that seem to bleed in and out of our perception or in and out of our reality, have something to do with prima materia, where they literally do raise and lower their frequency from spirit into matter. They descend into matter to present. I don't know. No, I don't have
before they splash into the Negredo.
Yeah. Well, boy, I splashed into the Negredo the last couple of years, but luckily that's over. But for the people out there, that is the first stage of solvet coagula, which is also a spiritual process that you go through, where you pretty much get torn apart psychically, and then you put yourself back together and rise as the phoenix from the ashes. Right. So it's a metaphor, but it's also chemistry.
I've been down so goddamn long that it looks like up to me. Yeah. I think it's the Doors song.
Oh, wow.
Love that. And we've got 2 minutes to show close. Thank you. And I want to have both of you back on again. And I cannot wait to go out in the field with both of you. I feel so blessed, Eira, to know you, thanks to Chris.
Oh, same, right back at you.
And we're in the same state, so we're going to be hanging out and things. And what are you doing next? What have you got your book coming out?
I don't know when I'm going to release my book. I actually have 3 books. I split my original one into 3. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't really have any motivation to do that right now, but it'll come out.
Okay, and I will keep everybody posted, and I'll keep everybody posted on Chris and his activities. I'm Erica Lukes. Thanks for listening to UFO Classified. Stick around for Willie Miranda. Have a great weekend.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a